77 WABC invites you to a family fun day and softball showdown on July 20th with net proceeds benefiting Shriners Children's. John Sterling will call the game as the FDNY takes on the NYPD with special guests Dwight Gooden, Art Shamsky, 77 WABC hosts, including Sid Rosenberg, Anthony Cumia, Lionel, Dominic Carter, and many more. For more info and to buy tickets, go to ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org. That's ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome, folks. This is the More Money Show on Red Apple Audio Network. And so thrilled that we have so many affiliates that have joined the show. So thank you. We have people around the country, mostly on the East Coast, but people listening in Chicago, people listening in Kansas City, people even some affiliates in California. So thank you for joining us. If you're new to the show, we are on every weekend on the East Coast from 1 to 3 p.m. on other affiliates, different times. But we are live. We are in color. And I am thrilled to be with you. This is my favorite weekend of the year. I love the 4th of July. I love our country. You cut me and I bleed red, white, and blue, as I bet that's the case with most of you listening to this show. It is a great, great country. And it is right that we celebrate the founding of our country. I was on with Larry Kudlow earlier today, and we were talking about Thomas Jefferson, of course, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, one of the greatest documents ever written. I would say that the two of the most important documents ever written, maybe other than the Bible, would be the Declaration of Independence and, of course, our U.S. Constitution. And I want to remind people that there was a saying back then in 1776 that our forefathers, the ones who formed our great, great country, put at risk what they called our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Because people forget this was a courageous thing to do, to say we are going to separate from the mighty United Kingdom. I mean, they were the alpha male economy. They had a mighty, mighty military. And this was an act of great courage. And they did put at stake their lives. They did put at stake their fortunes, and they did put at stake their sacred honor. And I wonder if we would do that today. Would you do that for our country? I was gone last weekend and for almost a week, and it's very rare that I've gone that long. But my great buddy Steve Forbes, who will be on the show later, asked me to come on the Forbes cruise, and we went. It was a great trip. We went on a cruise in the Mediterranean, and we went to Spain, and we went to some of the beautiful islands in Italy, and we went to Malta. By the way, Malta is just a little island near Italy. I didn't know much about it, and we docked there, we spent a day there, and there is a World War II graveyard there that has hundreds and hundreds of graves of American soldiers during World War II who took Malta from the Germans. It's just a little example of the kind of sacrifices that Americans have made over the last 250 years to keep our country free. So I don't know. Would you risk your honor and your life for America? I know most of us probably would, because we love our country. I am very, very concerned. Look, this is an economic show, and we're going to get into economics and how to make more money, because that's why most of you listen. But I have to say this, that this was a big, big, big week for the American economy. Big week. And this tax bill that passed, thank God, by what? 1 or 2 votes in the House, 1 or 2 votes in the Senate. I mean, the slimmest of margins, is an incredible achievement. And I'm sitting here looking at the front page of the Wall Street Journal saying that, what do they say here? I've got this right here. Unpopular bill poses big challenge for GOP after President signs mega bill into law. Well, unpopular? I don't know. I mean, some of the radical liberals think it's unpopular, but how is it unpopular to head off a $4 trillion tax increase next year? Because that's if this bill had not been passed, Americans would be facing a $4 trillion tax increase. The average family would have been paying $2,000 a year more. every small business in America would have been paying more. Whether you're a man or woman or black or white or Hispanic, if you got a small business, you get a 20% reduction in your taxes thanks to Donald Trump. If you're a family with kids, you get an extra payment because raising kids is expensive. I have three sons, and my wife has two sons. We have, now three of them are out of the nest, but we still have two here at home, and it's expensive raising kids, no doubt about it. So it's a little relief for one of the most honorable things you can do is have kids and rear them and turn them into great citizens. And so there's a lot in this bill, and I'm going to go through this over the course of the next 2 hours of this show, explaining to you all of the amazing things that are in this bill. But I think that the market is going to explode. I think we're going to become an incredibly prosperous country. Now, the market was up big time on Thursday when the news came in that they had the votes to pass this. So Wall Street likes this, investors like it, workers like it, families like it. Who doesn't like it except for Elizabeth Warren and maybe AOC and some others on the very, very left fringe of our country. But this is a bill that I believe is as important, maybe more so than the Reagan tax cuts of the 1980s. As you know, Ronald Reagan rebuilt our economy in the 80s by cutting taxes, reducing regulations, getting control of federal spending. Hopefully, this bill will do the same. It certainly cuts taxes and it certainly reduces regulations. We'll see whether Congress can cut spending. I'm a little skeptical of that myself. And when you're running a $2 trillion loss every year, as the United States government is, you got to rein in your expenditures. But this is a pro-growth bill. And when you have more growth and you have more prosperity and you have more people working, you have businesses making more money, guess what? You get more tax revenues. It's the best way to raise revenue is to make America a prosperous thing. We got a jobs report came out, very good report on Thursday, showing the employers are still hiring a record number of workers. We've got low on inflation in this country. We've got consumer confidence high. I mean, what's not to like about this picture? Really, I mean, God bless America. I was in Europe. Europe. It's amazing to me that the Europeans, their standard of living, you could just see it, is about 30% below the standard of living here in the United States. And 50 years ago, the Europeans had a higher standard of living than we do. So we have surpassed Europe. We've surpassed Asia. We're all concerned about China, but I think we're going to beat China in the end because we have free enterprise and they have socialism. So a lot good here, folks. It's a good time to feel good about America. One of the things I will be taking your calls throughout the show. One of the questions I want to pose to you is, it's a simple question. Are you proud of America? Are you proud of our country? Because the poll just came out by Gallup showing while about 90% of Republicans feel proud of their country, only 36%, according to the Gallup poll, of Democrats feel proud of their country. And if you're a Democrat, call in, tell me why, what makes you mad? Why are you angry? Maybe you don't like the fact that Trump is rounding up some of the criminal aliens and detaining them. Maybe you don't like the Medicaid cutbacks. I want to hear your opinion, and I want to understand why you don't feel good about our country, because things are going well for our country. We're not saints, but boy, we have a system that beats every other alternative out there. So, folks, we've got an action-packed show this day after the 4th of July. We're going to hear from Mike Falkender, who is one of the major guys over at the Treasury Department who made this tax bill possible. Then we're going to hear from Chris Wright, who is the Secretary of Energy under Trump. Has done an amazing job of opening up our energy resources, which is a big, big story. And then the second hour, we're going to be having a long conversation with my pal, one of my favorite people on this planet, Steve Forbes. He and I went on that cruise together last week, so we'll talk a little bit about what we learned. And we will be right back, folks. This is the More Money Show.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. It's the highlight of my week to be able to be in front of this microphone to talk to you. And we have affiliates now throughout the country on the Red Apple Audio Network. So thank you. If you're new to the show, we talk about economics, we talk about politics, we talk about finance, and we talk about how you can make more money. So there's nobody who knows more about making money and how to deal with our tax system than a good friend of mine and someone who's been a hero this week, and that's Michael Faulkner, who is the number 2 guy at the Treasury Department. He was in charge of helping get this tax bill through, which is an enormous achievement. I think he's probably been working 60 or 70 hours a week, and that may be putting it at a too low a number, because he also was tapped by Donald Trump to run the IRS, which is quite a challenge as well. So, Michael Faulkner, thank you for joining. Thank you for what you did for our country. Without you and without the great Scott Bessent, I don't think this would have gotten done.
It's great to be with you, Steve, and it was a tremendous victory, tremendous week for the American people. We have been working at this since before the administration even started, so that if the American people gave unified government to the America First movement, we would be ready to go. We have been working at this, and it came to fruition yesterday with the president's signature on that one big, beautiful bill.
So it was touch and go there for a while. Well, I have to tell you, I was skeptical that we could get. I mean, I remember Trump said a month ago, we got to get this done by the 4th of July. And I kind of rolled my eyes, and I think there's no way they're going to get this thing done by the 4th of July. Donald Trump must not understand Congress very well, because they always wait till the last minute. But boy, he said, get it done, get it to me on the 4th of July, and defied all expectations and got it done. How important was Donald Trump in terms of getting this through the House and Senate?
You know, the president provided leadership from the very beginning. You know, this, as I said, it didn't just start on January 20th. It started last year on the campaign trail, really setting out the themes and the important work that we need to do on behalf of the American people to turn this country around. You know, the Biden administration left us with a fiscal mess. They abhor growth. They think that big government is the way to generate prosperity. And of course, we know from President Trump's first term, we know from the Reagan Revolution that, in fact, it's empowering the private sector, it's getting government out of the way, that is the source of wealth creation and the source of prosperity for the American people. And that's why when he set the themes of ensuring that we extend the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, make it permanent, that we address some of the new growth incentives like extending immediate expensing of equipment back up to 100%, immediate expensing of new factory construction, addressing R&D tax credits, but then also providing labor incentives through things like no tax on overtime and no tax on tips, so that those Americans who really work hard are encouraged to do it even more. And at the same time, to go after the bloated spending that took place under the Biden administration, so reimposing work requirements on Medicaid, eliminating the Green New Scam that the Biden administration implemented. And Steve, we realized $1.5 trillion of mandatory spending cuts, unprecedented amount of fiscal discipline that's in this bill. The president worked, the Treasury Department worked, the National Economic Council worked from the very beginning, focusing on making sure that we get this bill over the line well before any kind of deadline was in place, because there is no better way, Steve, to open up the 250th year of our great nation than by getting this bill enacted.
That's right. If you think this is a great 4th of July, wait until next 4th of July when you have quite an agenda ready for our 250th anniversary. I can't wait for that. By the way, I'm talking to Michael Faulkner, who was really one of the guys who did all of the hard work over at the Treasury Department, working with Scott Bessent to get this thing done. So saluting both of you for your great work, Mike. But I'm reading the front page of the Wall Street Journal this morning. This is the weekend Wall Street Journal. And the story on the front page says, unpopular bill poses big challenge for GOP. And then I read, that's the headline, okay, Michael? And then I read the story and they go, well, no tax on tips. That's very popular with people. Requiring people to work for their welfare benefits. Yeah, that's popular. No tax on overtime. That's popular. Making the Trump tax cuts permanent. Yeah, that's popular. In other words, all of the elements of the bill, with maybe one exception, there's some disagreement about the Medicaid. But if you look at the individual things, and there are dozens of things in this bill that are all popular with the American people.
That's right. because and not only that, they work, and we know they work because the American people reelected Donald Trump because they remember what the economy was like prior to the pandemic, and they contrasted that with what they had under the Biden administration. So we are now engaged. Now that we have done the work of getting this bill across the finish line, we have two things that we need to do. Number one, we need to get it implemented. And so I said on an interview yesterday that while we're celebrating this weekend, starting Monday morning, we move into implementation phase at the Treasury and at the IRS because we need to make sure that the American people, when they see their refund checks next February, next March, that are the result of implementing this legislation, they are going to be reminded of just how much they benefited from this package. And then number two, we need to go out and explain to the American people all of these things, start explaining how no tax on tips works, talk to the business community about getting that manufacturing construction underway, because if at the end of the day the American people see better jobs, more growth opportunities, and better lives for their family, they are going to give credit to the president. They are going to give credit to the Republican Congress who secured this enormous victory on behalf of the American people. And let me also say one thing, because it got lost in all of the great excitement about the bill. We also got a Pillar 2 deal with the OECD this week. We got the Canadians to walk away from a digital services tax. This president did so much work, and we have tirelessly efforted at Treasury to realize these successes. But we are addressing the unfair tax negotiations that the Biden administration, that the Yellen Treasury engaged in. We got those fixed this week as well. So it was just an incredible, enormous success all around for the American people on the economic front this week.
So you got rid of that Janet Yellen, what you call it?
Minimum tax.
The minimum tax, which is crazy. We just got about a minute and a half left. I just wanted to ask you just one thing, just so I understand and our listeners understand. So this bill is almost everything in this bill is retroactive to the beginning of the year. So in other words, people will be getting a tax cut for the work they do, the investment they do this year. Is that right?
3% is the baseline for us. If you do this,
I love it. Michael Falconer, you are a national hero for what you and Donald Trump and Scott Bessent did. And folks, this is the More Money Show, and we will be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC on Red Apple Audio Network throughout the country. Thank you for all our new affiliates. We reach coast to coast. We got affiliates in California. We got them in New York. We got them in Maine. We got them down in Florida. So pleased that we have so many stations that have joined us. We are live. We are in color. And I am now so pleased to introduce someone who I call a friend because he is a friend, and someone I just met a couple of years ago, but he has done an amazing job for Donald Trump. I'm talking about Chris Wright, who is the Secretary of Energy policy under Trump and has already achieved amazing things for our country in just 6 months. So, Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for joining and for the great job you've done for our president.
Hey, Steve, thanks so much. Glad to be on your show. Congrats on being coast to coast, and appreciate you always bringing economic common sense to Americans.
Well, you bring a lot of energy sense, and I think I first got to know you when you were writing, you ran a very successful energy company. You wrote a great treatise on why it is so important that America become energy independent, energy dominant. Of course, that's exactly what Donald Trump says. So one question out of the gate here, Chris, is this bill allows more drilling and mining and timber sales and other things. Do I have that right?
Absolutely. I mean, the Biden administration literally went against the rule of law, and they just didn't do these mandated lease sales that the federal government is supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And so the One Big Beautiful Bill restores those regular lease sales that were normal until Biden became president. It has some special opening of lease sales, too, in Alaska that were particularly driven by strong pleas from Alaskan citizens and mostly from the Inuit residents of the North Slope of Alaska that have just not been able to develop their own resources. So lots of good stuff in this bill to just unleash American energy, not with new government subsidies, just getting the government out of the way and letting the private sector do its thing.
Right. By the way, just to clarify something you just said, Mr. Secretary, because this is very important. I'm talking to Chris Wright, who is Donald Trump's Secretary of Energy. So the natives in Alaska, they want the drilling, right? They want to be able to use those resources and to make money. Because when we hear from the environmentalists, the radical environmentalists, they say, "Oh no, this is going to hurt the natives in these areas," but they want this production.
Oh, overwhelmingly in favor of it.
Right.
Look, this is a tough climate world to live in up there. Their whole lives have been harvesting whales and living off a tough environment. Now they have tremendous underground resources, and they've been partners in the development since development started on the North Slope. No greater victims of the left shutting down development in Alaska than the Inuit and Native people of Alaska.
So when you wrote your treatise on energy policy, which was what I think 3 or 4 years ago, I loved it because it sounded a lot like what I've been saying and what others have been saying, that we have incredible energy resources in this country. We are not running out of oil. We're not running out of gas. We're not running out of coal. We're still 80% dependent on good old-fashioned fossil fuels, and we're going to use it all, right? We're going to use oil, gas, nuclear power, coal, whatever we have, so we can become energy independent. Is that a fair assessment of your energy policy?
Absolutely. More energy means better lives, means longer, healthier, more opportunity-rich lives, better for the United States' balance of trade, better to supply our allies around the world. But if you want the world to be a better place, it means you want the world to have more energy.
And we have more of it than just about anyone else, right?
We do. We are today by far and away the world's largest producer of oil and by far and away the world's largest producer of natural gas. Together, just those two energy sources provide over 70% of the energy consumed in the United States. And together with coal are responsible for making our long, healthy lives possible. The modern world is not possible without hydrocarbons. And this coming from a guy who went to college to work on nuclear, worked on solar, worked on geothermal. I don't have a background in oil and gas. I'm just passionate about energy. But today, the world, the advantages of hydrocarbons are just immense, and it's proven very hard to replace them. I continue to work. I'm all in on nuclear and geothermal, and if we can get better storage, solar's got a growing future as well. The world needs more energy, but you can't have a well-energized world and high quality of life if you restrict hydrocarbon development like Europe has done, and California and the U.S. was trying to move in that direction as well.
When you did that study, that analysis that when I first met you, that I think came out about 3 years ago. Is that available to people? Can they get that on the internet? Is there a website they can go to? Because it's a fantastic report.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and I've actually written 3 versions of it. The last one about 18 months ago, and it's called Bettering Human Lives 2024. And I publish it in the name
I'm sorry, that's
just
repeat. That's Bettering Human Lives 2024?
Yes, that's the name of the report.
Okay,
and I publish it in the name of Liberty Energy, not in my name, although the report is entirely written by me.
Got it.
Yeah, that's available. And for a corporate report, it's been reasonably widely read. But as you said, Steve, it's sort of an overview of energy, history of energy, overview of climate change, climate economics, and all these trade-offs that are involved in making people's lives better.
One thing that I learned from your report, Mr. Secretary, was, and I think that a lot of people are not aware of this, but there's no country that has reduced its carbon emissions over the last 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years than the United States. And that's in large part because of what I think is a wonder fuel, which is natural gas. Why is the left, why are the environmentalists against natural gas when it reduces pollution?
So I don't think that, look, I've been involved in the climate discussion for 20 to 30 years. Most of the people that are very passionate about climate change, it isn't really about incremental reductions of greenhouse gas emissions. If it was, things like electric vehicles that are neat and nice, rich people love them, but they're not reducers of greenhouse gas emissions. They're just shifters in the kinds of emissions. So, but Steve, to your point, the biggest driver of U.S. reductions has been the shale gas displacing coal in the electricity production sector. It's well over half of all of U.S. greenhouse gas emissions have just come from, by market forces, natural gas displacing coal. And yes, we have reduced greenhouse gas emissions more than the next 7 countries combined.
Wow.
But the biggest piece, market forces. Natural gas displaced coal, not because of environmental regulations. It just became cheaper. That's the way you want things to win in the marketplace, things to become better and things to become cheaper. That's how you better people's lives.
So one of the top priorities for Donald Trump, obviously, given the catastrophic 4 years of Joe Biden, is to bring inflation down, Chris. And one of the ways you do that, apropos of what you were just saying, is when you make energy less expensive, then everything basically comes down in price because energy is the master resource. It's part of everything. I wouldn't have this microphone I'm sitting in front of. I wouldn't have a computer. I wouldn't have the food to eat. I wouldn't have a home to live in if it weren't for energy. So you're committed to bringing energy costs down so that the prices of everything can come down.
So well said, Steve. That's exactly it. Every way we can get barriers out of the way so we can get the production of more energy and just supply and demand, that drives down the price. And look at where we are right now, Steve. We just had a major conflict in the United States. Iran for 46 years, the Middle East. Iran for 46 years has been the main troublemaker in the Middle East. They were getting close to an atomic bomb. Israel and the United States said, hey, that's not acceptable. We've had the biggest live fire battle there in 20 or 30 years. And we sit here today, gasoline prices and diesel prices are 25, 30 cents a gallon cheaper than they were 12 months ago.
Wow.
After a recent conflict in the Middle East. That's hats off to President Trump and his all-in energy agenda. That if you send messages to the marketplace that we're open to produce more, that puts downward pressure on prices. And I think American consumers across the country are benefiting from that today.
You know, Chris, talking to Chris Wright, who was our fantastic Secretary of Energy. When I first met Donald Trump with our buddy Larry Kudlow, we were talking to him in early 2016 about a bunch of policies. And I remember telling him, in part because I had read your papers, I said, with Donald, he wasn't president at that time. I said, if you get the energy policies right, you can make America energy independent. And I'll never forget, he kind of pounded his fist on his table. He said, Steve, I want America to be energy dominant, not energy independent. And is that still his goal, for America to be the energy dominant country in the world?
It's absolutely his goal. And it's so great. Look, I'm a lifelong energy nerd. I was passionate about energy when I was a high school kid. This is a president who's an East Coast real estate developer. He's never been in the energy business, but he instinctually gets how important energy is, that energy matters for American people. It matters for geopolitics. It matters for national security. He is all in 7 days a week on energy dominance.
So one last question, if I may, sir, and I appreciate so much on the day after the 4th of July, you're taking a few minutes out of your busy time. You're probably working 70 hours a week. When you work for Donald Trump, that's what people do. So can you explain to us very quickly what this does about the green energy, Green New Deal? Now, my own opinion, by the way, and I'd love your reaction to this, is I'm not against wind power. I'm not against, solar power. I'm not against electric batteries. I want the market to choose which is the most efficient form of energy. I don't want the government to put its thumb on the scale. What is that a fair appraisal of what your all energy policy is?
Very much so, Steve. Very, very much so. We're all about new technologies, new energy, different regions, different areas. There's different right answers for energy. There's no one energy. There's no good energy. There's no bad energy. There's no clean energy. There's no dirty energy. They all just have different sets of trade-offs. But the U.S. had gone down a destructive direction where we were paying, huge amounts of money, subsidies to wind and solar for over 30 years. And what happened was, normally, if you subsidize something, you get more production of it, and you ultimately push prices down. But we were subsidizing actually particularly poor forms of energy that take a lot of land, and most of all, you don't know when the wind is going to blow. You don't know when the sun's going to shine. And so you get these intermittent energy sources that the more we put them on our electricity grid, the more expensive our electricity prices became. And that wasn't a surprise because Germany did the same thing, as did Denmark and the United Kingdom. They were way ahead of us in putting tons of wind and solar on their grids. And Germany has tripled the electricity prices of the United States. We don't want to go down that pathway. So those were very inefficient subsidies. The taxpayers were paying hundreds of billions of dollars and then in taxes to pay for those subsidies. And then they were paying again as electricity prices became more expensive in the U.S. So we didn't ban wind or solar or EVs at all. As you said, we want them to compete in the marketplace. This was just an end to the subsidies to buy electric vehicles. And over the next 2 or 3 years, an end to the subsidies for wind and solar developers. But solar is going to continue to develop. Solar technology is getting better.
Right.
You'll continue to see solar developed in the United States. Without subsidies, I don't know how much wind development we'll see.
Yeah. I agree, Mr. Secretary. I've always said the worst thing that ever happened to the solar and wind industry was the government subsidizing it. I mean, I think it will do better if we just leave the government out of it. One last question on the way out, sir. Can we see gas prices go below $3 a gallon? It was up to as high as $5 a gallon under Biden. With these pro-energy policies, do you think we could see maybe $2.80, $2.75 gallon of gas? What do you think?
So it's not impossible, but I think we got to look at where gasoline prices are today. If you correct for inflation, they're the lowest they've been in 20 years.
That's amazing.
For the COVID year. Obviously, everything collapsed in COVID. So the prices for gasoline and diesel we have today are quite low. So I would say the goal, of course, is as low as possible, but I would consider success if we could keep them down low where they are right now for as long as possible. They might dip below $3, but even if they don't, if we can keep them down here at just over $3 a gallon and pushing against inflation, they're lower than they were a year ago. What else is much cheaper today than it was a year ago? So I feel good about where we are right now.
Last question on the way out, sir. You talk about energy. Have you ever met anybody who has more energy than Donald Trump?
No, is the short answer. He is unbelievably tireless all day long, every day, all into the evening, back at it the next morning, his travel schedule, the work schedule. I'm a pretty hard driving guy, but oh my God, he is next level. He is next level of energy.
I know exactly what you're talking about, having spent a lot of time with him as well. Well, Mr. Secretary, you're doing an amazing job. Thank you. Please come on the show again and give us an update. You're delivering for the president cheap and affordable and abundant energy. So thank you so much for your service to our country. We'll be right back. We'll be taking your calls at 1-800-848-9222 when we get back on The More Money Show.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. We're just finishing up our first hour, and what a great hour it's been. Chris Wright, Department of Energy Secretary, amazing. Mike Falkender at Treasury, who helped make this tax cut possible. This is a great day for America, folks. This is an absolute great day. I'm so proud of our country. I'm so proud of President Trump. And I have disagreements with Donald Trump. I'm not around, sometimes I like what Trump does. Sometimes I don't. Most of the time I agree with him. And he's been very good to me personally. I've been very honored to serve with him. But you look at this tax bill, I don't get it, folks. I don't get why every single Democrat in the House and Senate voted against it. I'm disgusted by that, frankly. And I'm not one who says the Republicans are the answer to all our problems, because they are not. Sometimes they're just as bad as the Democrats. But come on, every single Democrat wanted a $4 trillion tax increase on January 1st. It's disgusting. I'm mystified by it. This was the party under John F. Kennedy that voted for one of the biggest tax cuts in American history. This was the party that many Democrats crossed over and voted for Ronald Reagan's tax cuts in 1981 to rebuild our economy. In 1986, when we cut the highest tax rates from 50 to 28% and got rid of loopholes, virtually every Democrat in the United States Senate voted for it. And now we can't get one? We can't work on one Democrat. So in our second hour, by the way, I'll love to take your calls and explain to me, if you're a Democrat, why do you think that is? Are the Democrats trying to undermine our country? Do they love taxes so much they just want to explode? I think it would have been the tax equivalent of a nuclear bomb dropping on our economy if we allowed that to happen, and that's what the Democrats voted for. We're running out of time here. I'm going to take one quick call from Mike before we start our second hour. So, Mike from New York, what do you got, sir?
When Biden was president for 4 years, telling us he didn't have the authority to close the border and keep out 20 million people, was he lying, or he didn't know what he was talking about?
Well, I don't know if he actually ever said that. I'll take your word for it. I don't like to call people liars, but I will say this. What we have discovered, Mike, and I'm so glad you called and brought this up because it's something that I've been thinking a lot about. Donald Trump in less than 3 months, and Tom Homan is a friend of mine. He's done a spectacular job as the border czar, did a hell of a lot better job than Kamala Harris did. Kamala never even went to the border. She did nothing on the border. And we had something like 8 million illegal immigrants come in. Tom Homan comes in as Trump's appointee with the full support of President Trump. And in 3 months, he has reduced illegal crossings. You ready for this, folks? By 92%. The illegal immigration problem of people flooding into our country is over. We're going to let people come in legally, lawfully, get a visa, do it the right way. Immigrants are so important to our country. We wouldn't have a country without the great immigrants who come to this country. You got to do it the right way, Mike. And Trump proved you can do it. You can secure our border, and he's done it in a humane and an effective way. Congratulations, Mr. President, for doing that. I never thought he could do it in 90 days, but he did. And what it proves is it's not that Joe Biden couldn't secure the border, folks. It's that he didn't want to secure the border because he wanted people to come in and vote Democrat. I really believe that's the case. Folks, we'll be getting ready for the second hour. Thanks so much for joining, and we will be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Okay, folks. Well, it is the day after 4th of July, and we are all in a patriotic mood, hopefully. Hopefully you love our country. I love our country. I think it is the greatest country on the planet. We are a flawed people, but we're human beings. We're not perfect, but this is an amazing country, and the best is yet to come. I really believe you ain't seen nothing yet in terms of what Donald Trump is going to do for our country. We passed a sweeping tax cut on Thursday. Trump had it signed into law on Saturday, and boy, this is gonna be like taking a champagne bottle and shaking it up and taking that cork off it. I think you're going to see an explosion of entrepreneurship, of job hiring, of new businesses being created. I think we will be the envy of the world again. I think we're going to see low prices. I think we're going to see a lot of jobs. So there is so much to be proud of in our country. And look, I'm not saying we solved all the problems in the world. I'm not saying that there isn't racism and there aren't problems with our country. But, having just gotten back from 8 days in Europe, and I had a wonderful trip, by the way. I went to Italy. I went to Spain. I went to a bunch of other countries, and I had a wonderful time. The history there, those countries are so old compared to the United States. They go back to, the before Christ, and our country is only 250 years old. But what I couldn't, I basically wanted to kiss the ground when I got back here, because I love this country so much, and the freedom and liberty. And I mentioned at the top of last hour that famous saying that Americans, our forefathers, the revolutionaries, they did put forth and put at risk their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor to give birth to this great country of ours. And it is true that that it is the right of people to be created equal. It is a self-evident truth that we are all created equal under God. And that was a revolutionary concept 250 years ago. I mean, today we sort of take it for granted. But by the way, one of my favorite forefathers was John Hancock. I'm from Chicago, and we have the famous John Hancock building in Chicago, which when I was growing up, I think was the second or third largest high rise in the world. I don't think it's even in the top 10 right now because we've had so many big buildings built. But John Hancock is the one. Remember when the signers of the Declaration, they really did put their lives at stake against mighty Britain and their mighty Navy and their mighty military. No one knew what was going to happen. They didn't know if they'd be executed or what. So they were taking a big, courageous step in signing that. And a lot of them, if you look at the signing of the actual Declaration, a lot of them just scrawled their names very tiny so that they could, maybe that the Brits wouldn't be able to read who it was. But not John Hancock. Not John Hancock. If you look, he signed it so proudly in big, bold letters. And that's why they say, put your John Hancock here on a document. So, I'm proud of him and so proud of all of the people who made this great country possible. Great things are coming, folks. I got to tell you, this bill is fantastic. It is going to make the tax cuts permanent. We're going to expand school choice. We're going to expand healthcare savings accounts. We're going to get rid of all the Green New Deal. We're going to get rid of the student loan bailouts, which never made any sense to me. We are going to have more enterprise zones for low-income areas, give tax incentives for businesses to invest in inner cities and rural areas that have been deserted. And we're going to rebuild America. So I am very, very psyched for this. We're going to hear in a minute from my great, great friend, Steve Forbes. He and I were on the cruise together. So we spent last week together. But before we do that, you're going to hear from one of the guys who I think is the best in the business in terms of helping you make more money, and that is Ryan Payne and his father, Bob Payne of Payne Capital Management.
Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Hey, it's Ryan Payne and Bob Payne from Payne Capital Management. Of course, that's Payne, coming to you every week on the More Money Show, talking about the markets, the economy, your retirement. And Bob, I would have thought with all the conflict in the Middle East that we would have had higher oil prices today and we'd have a lower market. And we had the exact opposite. Mind-blowing. Markets are at a record high. We've got oil prices plummeting. Looks like the world is looking at prosperity. How do you read the tea leaves here?
Well, Ryan, just 2 weeks ago, we had record pessimism. You had all the experts coming on the nightly news telling you that the market's going to be big. Be prepared for a big drop in the market. And what happens? Oil drops. The market goes to new highs. And it's like every time this happens, whenever the experts, all the forecasts are in agreement, something else always happens.
It's kind of remarkable, right? I mean, we always like to say that these Wall Street strategists and analysts, they make fortune tellers, look good. So they're terrible at predicting the future. And, I think one of the most important dynamics to think about right now, especially for all our listeners that are preparing for retirement, retired now, is it's really hard to predict the future, right? And to predicate your portfolio on what you think is going to happen next, man, oh man, that can be a very, very dangerous game to play, Bob.
Well, let me just remind you, Rye, no one knows, right? No one knows. No one can predict what's unpredictable. No one can know what's unknowable. And that's why you have to be fully invested in your strategy in a diversified portfolio at all times.
You really do, because, look, I mean, we realize markets are going up. We're at record highs right now. Everyone's feeling good. You're probably looking at your portfolio statement and feeling like, man, oh man, I'm feeling pretty prosperous right now. But we know you have good markets, you have bad markets. And the question you always have to ask yourself is when things go the other direction, am I protected? Am I prepared? And I think a lot of us probably don't really know. We haven't put our portfolio under the stress test. And the time to do it is when things are good.
Well, hey, Rod, this week, technology had a great week. Now you have the S&P 500 is almost up 5% for the year. Meanwhile, if you're invested in non-U.S. assets like international, you're up 20% this year. The dollar's been dropping. You have to be invested for all circumstances. And that's why a diversified strategy works. And hopefully our listeners have been listening to us for the last 10 years, are fully diversified right now.
Yeah, well, I've been taking notes, Bob. I've been taking notes every time you talk. But I think, look, right now more than ever, what you have to think about is what happens if the Federal Reserve cuts interest rates, right? What happens if all of a sudden we do get some bad economic news? We do get something that happens in the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and the market sells off very quickly. So the question is, if the tide goes out, are you swimming naked And I would argue right now with all the portfolios we look at, there's a lot of inherent risk in your portfolio that you're not seeing because the tide's up and now's the time to address it.
You know, Ryan, that's really a frightening thought to me. You know, after 50 years in the business, I don't want to see me naked, right? I don't want to see the tide go out. All right. I want to be in a position where I don't have to worry about things like that. But, you know, one of the things we talked about over the last couple of weeks is there's so much negative press out there. It's fun for us. We don't have to point out what's wrong. We get a chance to point out what could go right. And a lot of things that we talked about the last couple of weeks just went right this week.
They really did. And I think the one thing you do have to be concerned about is, and what we've been concerned about for the last couple of years, is inflation is going higher, right? If the economy actually is doing better, it sounds maybe contrarian, but actually inflation goes up because, well, people have more money to buy, right? That puts more pressure on the prices of goods and services. And if you're getting close to retirement right now, what you have to start thinking about is, how am I going to survive the higher cost of living, right? It's fine that the market's going up right now, but you can't extrapolate that out over the next 5 years, 10 years. So what you have to figure out is, how do I fund my retirement as my expenses continually go higher because of the cost of living? And just having your money in a growth portfolio, that doesn't cut it. That can be a big problem.
Well, first of all, Ryan, I do love growth, because if my assets don't grow, I don't overcome inflation. But the beauty of what's happening in our economy globally right now is you have a productivity increase coming. That's a fancy way of saying profits are going up, because they're going to be using artificial intelligence, going to be using robotics, right? We're going to be able to resolve these supply chain issues. And not only does earnings go up, but more importantly, for someone like me who's about to retire, going to be living off their assets, dividends are going up. Dividends are being paid next week. I'm excited. I got money to reinvest into my portfolio next week, Ryan, because I just had another record quarter in dividends.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? Because you can't have a static income plan. The problem is, if you buy an annuity, if you're sitting in a money market fund right now, right, that annuity pays the same income every year, yet your expenses are going higher. If you're sitting in a money market fund right now, your interest is actually going lower. Bob, look, I'm not a mathematician, but if I need more income over my lifetime and the income on my portfolio is going down, that's a terrible strategy for retirement. So the question is, do I have a dynamic income plan where the income is actually increasing over time? Because if not, you're going to lose against purchasing power. That's a big problem.
You know, Ryan, I don't know what you keep talking about, that taxes are going to go up, cost of living is going to go up. I just saw a new candidate come into New York, and his big solution to everything is just tax rich people. Now, I don't know if everybody knows this, but a politician's definition of a rich person is someone who has an income. And so, you know, you've got to hedge against these things. You've got to have tax-free income in your portfolio, right? You want to make sure that your portfolio is tax efficient. The most permanent loss you'll ever have are taxes that you pay.
It's a great point, because, look, we have deficit spending that's going to increase exponentially over the next couple of years. You're right. These politicians can't help themselves. So you have two things you have to worry about. That's rising inflation and more taxes. So when you look at your portfolio and you look at living on your money, you have to, it's not only, Bob, is my income going up over time, but what am I taking in after taxes? Because you can get a nice income on your portfolio, but if you're paying all of it in taxes, that's not so efficient, right? It's not what you make, it's what you take. That's why it's all about optimizing the tax efficiency. And most portfolios we look at aren't addressing that issue. But man, oh man, they're the two biggest enemies of every retiree today.
And Ryan, I get it. You know, fear and greed are unbelievable emotions, right? And, you know, really, literally 2-3 weeks ago, we had record negative sentiment, right? Consumer confidence was in the toilet, right? Because of all these negative headlines. But, you know, you can't react to the headlines. You can't react to the day-to-day movements of the market. You have to be an investor. And it's real simple if you do it based on what your money needs to do for you, not, you know, what the markets need to do.
Yeah. And if you're thinking to yourself right now, okay, Bob Ryan, I get it. I need my money working for me. I've got to figure out an income game plan for retirement. I need to know what I'm paying in taxes. Can I reduce those taxes? And is my income going to keep up with the cost of living over the rest of my life? Well, if you're one of the next 10 callers and you saved over $1 million for your retirement, Bob and I will run for your now famous Total Financial Master Plan. And we'll do that with no obligation or cost. It's a full holistic review. We literally look at everything. We'll go as far as building you your own personalized financial portal. We'll give you a bird's eye view of your entire financial life, hone on every issue you need to address today, how to take Social Security, how to draw from your portfolio, factoring in inflation and taxation so you don't run out of money. We will build that dynamic income plan. We'll look at diversification. Markets have been wild this year. I don't need to tell you, has your portfolio been extremely volatile? Or Are you sitting with way too much money in CDs, money market funds, paralysis by analysis, can't figure out what to do? We'll put together a full investment game plan. We'll show you how to grow your wealth, but most importantly, protect it over the rest of your life. And we'll look at fees and taxes. Wall Street loves to sell you high cost, tax inefficient products like annuities, mutual funds, structured products, private structured products. We're going to break down all the costs in your portfolio. Show how to reduce that cost, optimize your portfolio for taxes. It's not what you make. It's what you take. You'll get a full tax playbook. We have 10 slots if you saved over $1 million for your retirement, and you call or text right now.
All you have to do is text or call 844-752-6692. That's 844-752-6692, or just simply call 844-PLAN-NYC. That's 844-PLAN-NYC. If you're one of our next 10 callers, you've saved over $1 million for your retirement. Our team of financial advisors and certified financial planners will help you to create your own unique total financial master plan. Now, there's no obligation. There's no cost for this analysis. Matter of fact, we're the only firm in the city will do this analysis for you up front at no cost, or even do it if you do pay for it. But, you won't have a plan either if you're not one of our next 10 callers. So don't miss out. Text or call right now at 844-752-6692. That's 844-752-6692, or just simply call 844-PLAN-NYC. That's 844-PLAN-NYC.
Hey, if you want to learn more about myself and Bob and our firm, Payne Capital Management, of course, that's Payne, simply go to BeBullish.com. That's BeBullish.com. Stay tuned. We got more money coming your way.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. Having a lot of fun on a beautiful, beautiful Saturday afternoon in the first week of July. I hope you all had a wonderful, wonderful, patriotic 4th of July yesterday. Could not have been more gorgeous on the East Coast. And I was privileged this past week, as most of you know. I missed the show last weekend because I was on a cruise with my buddy Steve Forbes, who is Forbes had sponsored a cruise. We had about 80 to 100 folks on that cruise with us. We went throughout the Mediterranean. We went to Spain and Italy and Malta, and I love Capri. We ended there, and then ended in Rome. And Steve Forbes, thanks for inviting me on that. I had a great time, and so did my wife, Ann. But now we got to get back to business because we have this new tax bill in place. I think this is, Steve, a quite an incredible achievement, and I think you deserve a great deal of credit because you put a lot of these issues, whether it was school choice or whether it was the flat tax or whether it was the importance of cutting marginal tax rates. You were the one who really put these agenda items. You and Ronald Reagan started this movement a long time ago. So, Steve, thanks for joining. What do you think of the big, beautiful bill?
Well, first of all, it's fun having you and Ann with us on the investor cruise.
That was great.
The cruisers, as we call them, got a lot of good investment advice, hoping to make more than enough money to come back on a future cruise. But the bill was a monumental achievement. It covered a lot of ground, and while we can find flaws in it, it did some very good things. First of all, the key thing, Steve, was certainty, making sure we
good
got
point.
having the deductions up front for investment, including factories. Instant expensing is critical.
Yep.
And other provisions. We can lament that they raised the blue state salt.
I don't like that.
to 40,000. They should have followed our advice and just reduced the tax rates, which would have done the same thing, and added incentives, and
That's
not
right.
putting in the 15% corporate tax that the president wanted. But overall, it was a pretty good thing, and they got rid of a lot of junk, too. For example, Venmo and PayPal don't have to report every transaction above $600. Yeah. Huge invasion of privacy.
Yes.
We remove price controls on orphan drugs and the like. So I'm sure we'll find some bad stuff that was snuck in, but overall, getting this thing done, and getting it done by the 4th of July 3rd, actually, the signing was yesterday, the 4th, was a remarkable achievement. A lot more has to be done, and now we have to focus on continued deregulation. This bill codifies some very good stuff. But a lot of work to be done, but this is a heck of a nice platform to do the remaining work.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think you did a good summary. Now let's go through some of these individual items, Steve. I'm talking to the great Steve Forbes about the big and beautiful bill. You just mentioned the orphan drug issue. So explain that one to me and to my listeners. What is the issue there?
Well, there are a lot of diseases that don't have many patients and therefore don't get the kind of investment that you'd normally get. Years ago, the Congress did do something right by putting in provisions to help finance research in these so-called orphan drugs, saving thousands of lives of people. Right. But unfortunately, the Biden administration put in price controls, and this gets the whole thing of pharmaceutical price controls, which would kill the innovations that must be coming. Very exciting stuff coming along about replacing lungs and the like, getting shots for cancer, and major stuff coming along. You put in price controls, however convoluted,
terrible.
You kill that stuff off. We saw that in Europe. Europe was once a font of new pharmaceuticals, new medical devices, but as the government dominated the healthcare industry there, guess what? Reduced to a trickle. So this was one good small step in the right direction, and I hope we build on that with the rest of Medicaid and Medicare, not kill innovation. One of the things I hope the president does, he's made references to it in the future on trade, is that countries should pay more of their share for the $2.6 billion that it takes to bring a new drug to market.
Yes.
What in effect they do is we pay the $2.6 billion for a new medicine, and the other countries buy it at almost cost with all the sophistication and subtlety of Tony Soprano. What they say is if you don't give it to it, they don't say it directly, but the implication is you don't give it to us at a good price, we'll steal the patent. And so as a result, we have to make that a big issue. And the amazing thing, even though these people don't pay the proper price, the drug availability, because of their tight budgets and because of socialism, the access to these medicines is not as widespread in other countries as it is in the United States.
Yeah, no, it's a big problem. And incidentally, when you talk about things that are delaying the introduction of drugs, let's not forget the FDA, which is one of the I think more sinister regulatory agencies. I'm an investor in a drug that is one of those kind of orphan drugs. So it's a disease that is a neurological disease, terrible disease, but it only affects about 40,000 people a year. Now that's a lot of people, but it's not a lot to make money. And we've had this thing. We think the evidence looks very strong that it works. And my feeling is, Steve, these people are going to die if they don't have access to something. Why not let people use this drug if they want to, but the FDA won't let it. And, Milton Friedman, you knew Milton Friedman. He used to say the FDA kills people because every time they say, oh, we have a new drug that we just approved, saves 50,000 lives. Well, what about the 50,000 people who died last year because you didn't allow the drug on the market?
Absolutely. And one other thing on that is that Medicare and Medicaid should approve, talking about the FDA, when the FDA approves of a drug, that should immediately be permitted for reimbursement under Medicare and Medicaid. A lot of these drugs are being delayed that way. And so, again, a lot of people are hurt unnecessarily, some mortally. So, yes, there's work to be done in this area.
And by the way, drugs are a lot cheaper way to provide treatment for people than surgery or other, other ways of dealing with diseases that are much more expensive. So that's a great point. Well, another issue you and I worked on that I think we've resolved, not totally, but to a great extent is the spectrum auction. That is in the bill, Steve Forbes. So the United States military owns a lot of the electronic spectrum. We need that for all sorts of telecommunications innovations. And they've scored this, I think, as $86 billion of revenues to the government by allowing private companies, whether it's Verizon or AT&T or some of these others, to use that spectrum to advance, everything from cell phones to artificial intelligence.
That's right. And typical of government bureaucracies, we love our military, but the Pentagon bureaucracy does not want to let go of this unused spectrum, and even though they don't need it. But that's typical of bureaucracy, and this bill addresses that. It's a huge source of revenue, and I think it's going to be above, if they do it right, above the $86 billion they're forecasting. And another thing, though, is disappointed, talking about disappointments in the bill, is they didn't include a provision to reduce the capital gains tax.
Yes.
As you know, every time they reduce that tax, the government gets more revenue instantly. So They passed by this thing that would have added tens of billions of dollars of revenue in the next 10 years.
Well, we would also have liked to have seen the 15% corporate rate, which is something Trump talked a lot about, but that was not included in the bill, unfortunately. But one other victory, and I just wanted to ask you this last question, Steve, and I know it's a Saturday afternoon, and you should be relaxing after the last week, but there's some money for school choice. We're taking the money away from the school establishments and the blob, and we're giving a lot of that money to the parents so they can choose good schools for their kids. That's something, when you ran for president, you were one of the first presidential candidates who talked about school choice for all kids.
Well, that's right. And the key thing is, as you just hit on, taking it out of the hands of the bureaucracy, right, and letting parents make the choice. And we need that in education. We need that in health care more than what we have now. This bill takes some steps in the right direction on that, but there's a lot more to be done to totally empower patients. And so you get a free market in health care. You get a free market in education. And you'll turn what looks like two big drags on the economy into, in terms of cost, into real innovative, where we get more for less. Parents will insist on educations, and patients will get more in the ways of cures and drugs for less cost. Win-win all around.
Well, Steve, you had a lot to do with this. So did obviously Donald Trump. So did Speaker Johnson. It was a great victory.
And so did you. Don't downplay your role. You're hammering this for years.
Thank you for coming on, Steve. And we will be right back, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. I hope you had a wonderful, wonderful Independence Day, 4th of July. I did. It was just absolutely gorgeous day. And it's one of my favorite holidays. I just love celebrating this great country. As I talked about earlier on the show, our founding fathers really did put their lives in honor and their fortunes at stake for promoting our freedom. And the Declaration of Independence is one of the greatest documents ever written. It is self-evident that all men are created equal. By the way, that was considered back 250 years ago, a very radical idea that all men are created equal. Now, there was always an asterisk in that sense that we had slavery back at that time. And thank God, 100 years later, or a little less than 100 years later, we abolished slavery, which was obviously an evil. And now we do have a country. There's racism in America, no question about it. But we are a country that is a true multicultural success story. And no country in the world has ever integrated so many people from all over the world. Everybody comes here. When I was in Europe last week, everybody is so marveling at what's happening in America. They think that Donald Trump is most of them. I mean, some of them don't like Trump, but most of the people were telling me, boy, we wish we had somebody like Donald Trump in our country who could really stand for the people. and stand for not the politicians and the special interests, but the people, what's best for our country. So I think I've said this many times on this show, folks. I believe we're going to see a Trumpian revolution around the world. Get rid of the arrogant and out of touch politicians and put people in charge who put people first and put their country first, and not. It's a strike against globalism. You know what the left wants to do is have global government. So that you can have complete government control over people's lives. I'm totally against that. I'm for small, limited government. I like local government more than state government. I like state government more than the federal government. Let's devolve power back to the people, as John Lennon said. Power to the people. That's what we believe in. All right, we've got callers waiting. And I appreciate their patience. It's been a busy afternoon. And we have one line open. So if you'd like to join the conversation, 1-800-85, let's see, what is the number again? What doing a brain fart here. 1-800, yep. 848-9222, right? Sorry about that one, folks. 1-800-848-9222 or 1-800-848-WABC. And Tony, my good friend Tony, has been very patiently waiting. And Tony, I think you're calling because I asked the question earlier, why are so many people not proud of our country? Why is it that young people are not proud of our country? But you say, Tony, you are proud to be an American.
Hi, Steve Moore. Happy 4th of July weekend. Listen, our country, this United States of America, was made up of 13 colonies. And as you said so beautifully, businessmen, all different kinds of businessmen who were doctors, lawyers, all people who were not career politicians, but hardworking people who said, we do not want to be under the heavy hand of the British government. And had it not been, we don't want to be taxed, Steve Moore. We don't want to be denied our rights to life and liberty. And many people who don't know what our country is all about think it's about the Democratic Party. We started our country with no party involved. We started a country for Americans. And so when I think of President Trump, just to pull it home, Steve Moore, President Trump has a businessman just like our founding fathers. And I want to tell you the second thing. Both President Trump and Speaker Mike, in God we trust. Every step they take, they pray under one God, with liberty and justice for all. God bless you, Steve Moore.
All right, Tony, hold on. Before I let you go, I'm going to ask you two quick questions, okay? The first question is, do you think that people should have to work to get welfare benefits?
I believe that everyone should have to work, and if you cannot work, they have to be vetted, and there's some entitlements. But we need to look at the pot, Steve Moore, because people are coming to our country and taking advantage, and I don't like that.
Yeah. And second of all, why do we not teach American history to our kids? Now it's social studies. I don't I learned, you learned, and I learned American history. I don't think most kids don't even know what happened in 1776, Tony.
I think if any school in this country wants any funding from the federal government, they need to teach about George Washington and our founding fathers. Ron Chernow wrote a book about George Washington, and as you study the book about what a man he was, you cannot be a citizen in this country without having read at least one book about the father of our country.
Good point. Tony, great call. Thank you for calling in. I really enjoy your insights. Okay, let us go with Gordon in Brooklyn.
Yes, Steve, a great show as usual. Just to introduce a bit of a cautious note here, do you think that President Trump's tariff policies are making a lot of friends for the United States and other countries? And do you think this could be a problem at some later date?
Well, it's a good question, Gordon. And look, I'm a free trade guy. I think most people who are regular listeners to the More Money Show know I believe in free trade. I believe when two countries trade with each other voluntarily and unhindered, that it's by definition, both countries are better off. That's the magic of the free market system, folks. If I give you something in exchange for you giving me something, and we do it voluntarily, then we're both better off. That's the magic of free enterprise. And so I believe that's true when two people trade. I think it's also true when two countries trade. But Trump's policy is, look, we got to have a level playing field. And he wants to, and he has been successful, folks. And again, I've been skeptical of this, but so far he's been successful at getting other countries to lower their tariffs on our dairy products, our manufactured products, our cars, our technology. So I really applaud that. And Gordon, great call, but I've got 3 or 4 other people on the line, so I want to get through as many of these as I can. There is one line open, folks, on the More Money hotline, 1-800-848-9222 or 1-800-848-WUS. I'm sorry, 1-800-848-WABC. And let's see, we have Lorraine from Yonkers.
Hi, Steve.
Thank you for calling.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Thank you for having me. Happy 4th weekend.
You too.
Okay, so basically, I just wanted to, I guess the thing about the bill, now I'm not financially minded at all, okay? That was a subject that I failed several times, so definitely not my forte. Okay, but one thing that I do see a lot is that the bill increases the deficit by something over $3 trillion. And I think, we've been hearing year after year after year of how concerning this deficit is. And here's another step in that direction, right? Which direction that we don't want to go in. And I did see, by the way, something in your newsletter about instead of pumping tons of money into ICE, why don't we have something like a pay-to-stay kind of program for these folks that came over? Because this would be a very, not only would it be, less spent, but it would also be a positive reinforcement, right? Rather than everybody becoming a Democratic voter, right? Because the Republicans are evil, we would be helping and we wouldn't be seeing such negativity all the time.
Yes. Okay, Lorraine,
That's
great.
all I wanted to say.
All right. Okay. Yes, great call. Thank you. Happy 4th of July weekend to you as well. That's why I like to get your calls, folks. I learn a lot from listening to you, and so do all our listeners. So, by the way, we do have one line still open, 1-800-848-9222. So let me address the two issues that Lorraine just brought up because they're both important. First of all, it is a lie that this bill increases the deficit by $3 trillion. It is a lie. It is a lie. All we are doing is making sure that the taxes don't go up next year. In other words, these people are saying, oh, if we just had an automatic $3 trillion tax increase, then the deficit wouldn't go up. But nobody wants that. Do you want to pay $2,000 a year for your family? Can you afford to do that? Can a small business afford to pay 20% more taxes? What about families with kids? Are they going to lose the benefits? Are we going to reduce the standard deduction so people have to itemize? I mean, that's crazy policy to me. That's number one. It is just not true that this increases the debt by $3 trillion. Number two, if you increase the economic growth of our country, if you increase the productive nature of our country, if we get more people working, businesses making more money, new businesses being founded, you can't have that happening when taxes are going up. You strangle the economy. So what I'm here to tell you, this is the essence of what supply side economics is all about. If you tax something, you get less of it. If you lower taxes, you get more of that activity. And so we're going to lower the taxes on our businesses, on our employers, on the cost of working, and we're going to get more people working. We're going to get more profits. We're going to get more companies from abroad coming into the United States. That's what's happened under Reagan. That's what happened under JFK. That every time we have cut taxes in this country, good things are coming. Anybody who thinks we can balance this budget by raising taxes, I'm sorry, you got to have your head examined. We do not have a tax problem in America. We're collecting record amounts of tax revenues. What we have is a budget that has gone up by $2.5 trillion over the last 6 years. It's unbelievable how much the budget is expanded. So all we're saying is let's have some discipline in how we spend the money. You all know this. The average amount of money that is being wasted by our government is about 30 to 35 cents out of every dollar. So let's get rid of the waste. Let's have work requirements if you're going to get welfare programs. Let's get rid of all of the fraud that's $500 billion a year. So we can balance our budget, we can reduce our deficit, we can grow the economy, we can put more people to work, we can make our country healthier and happier. Mr. Producer, do we have time for one more call, or is that it?
Yes, we have Sue from Pennsylvania.
Sue, you're our last caller. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, love the show. I'm feeling great about everything that's going on.
Me too.
I did today.
I'm on cloud nine right now, Sue. I just love what's happening in our country.
Me too. And the first thing I did today is I got out last year's tax return, and I'm looking at the cap on the SALT tax. I know what you guys said about that, but boy, that's going to help me out a lot. And the no tax.
Wait, where do you live? Where do you live?
I'm in Pennsylvania. I'm like 30 miles outside of Philadelphia. So
okay, got it.
It's not necessarily a blue state, but it depends on the day, I guess.
Yeah, that's right.
And the other.
Well, by the way, Sue, can I just interrupt you for a second? Thank you to Pennsylvania. Yeah. Thank you for people like you, because if Pennsylvania had gone for Kamala Harris, we would not have won this election. I always said, whichever direction Pennsylvania went to, and that's why I went to Pennsylvania many times, canvassing for Donald Trump, because you guys made the difference. So thank you. I know you worked hard too.
I did, and I donated to Trump's campaign many times, and I've got many hats to prove it. But anyway, the other thing I'm thrilled about is the no tax on Social Security, because I'm one of those people that withholds 7%, and I'm going to be either filling out a W-4V or getting online and making sure that ends right away.
Good point. Well, great call, Sue. Thank you. I'm glad we were able to squeeze that in. Folks, I just want to mention one thing on the way out. Get the Unleash Prosperity hotline. That's what Sue was mentioning. It is absolutely free. Why would you not be getting something that's absolutely free? It is a daily hotline email that collects a lot of very good information for you. I'm not selling you anything. There's no ads. It's just information. It's to make you the smartest person in the room when you're talking about finance and economics and politics. If you want to make more money, you got to get the hotline. So just go to unleashprosperity.com, sign up for free. And if you don't like it, you can just stop. But I think you will. I know many members of the Congress. I know the people in the White House are reading it. I know my friends at Fox News are reading it. You should be reading it too. I hope you have the wonderful rest of your holiday weekend. And now we will hear from Ryan and Bob Payne, who are two of the best in the business in terms of how you can make more money.
Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Ryan Payne and Bob Payne back again on the More Money Show from Payne Capital Management. Of course, that's Payne, talking about the markets, the economy, and your retirement. Fear and loathing today's economy, money mistakes to avoid. And the bottom line is right now we have a very volatile, uncertain time. And what we find is when you have times like this, investors typically make bad decisions. So I thought we'd talk about the top 4 bad decisions we find people make that are extremely detrimental to their long-term financial game plan. And I think the first one here is going to cash when things are uncertain. Sounds so good, but such a bad idea.
Well, and that is the whole point. You shouldn't be fearful and loathing of the economy. You should be fearful of inflation. Everybody's biggest risk as an investor is how much is their cost of living going to go up. So, Chris, you always like to say, you got to own stocks for the best inflation hedge there is, and you don't have to do any work. You just have to sit and swivel and enjoy the return.
Yeah, well, I think that's the hard part is that people don't see that trade-off, that they just have to do nothing and they'll make money over time.
It's kind of like that guy that goes to church every week and he prays to God to, help him win the lottery. And he goes every week, and finally God calls down and says, Joe, meet me halfway, buy a ticket. Right? You can't win the lottery if you don't buy a ticket, and you can't get these stock market returns unless you own them, right? So we're getting wonderful dividends next week, right? They're all being increased. But if you didn't own the stocks, you're not getting the dividends.
That's a great point, Dad. A lot of times I'll run through the performance reports with our clients, especially if they're trying to get out, and I'll show them what their return was without their dividends. And I'll point out you can't get them unless you're in.
Well, it's a great point, right? Regardless if the market goes up or down, you're still getting paid on your investments. And the problem is when you go to cash, you have to be right again, right? Because now you're sitting in cash, your money market fund, you're waiting for the right time for the markets to settle down. And Bob, as you love to say, markets don't settle down, they settle up. And as we're recording this today, markets are up over 500 points as we've somehow sealed a deal apparently with the UK on tariffs. You just can't predict that stuff ahead of time.
Well, the other thing is I've never seen so much pessimism on the part of consumers, even though they're still spending, their confidence is very low. Business confidence is low. But meanwhile, we have record earnings. We have record projected earnings. It's just that uncertainty and that volatility that comes with it just causes people to, fall into their emotions so quickly.
Well, I think the other problem too is that, so many people right now are just invested in one area of the market. If you look at these recent market pullbacks, it's hitting certain areas of the market harder than others. Like, for example, like international is up for the year and most people weren't invested in international. So it's like when you have a pullback like that, to most people, it's like, well, cash is the answer because that seems like the safest.
Well, that's the other money mistake you want to avoid, right? Is don't double down on your past strategy, right? Because if you got hammered because all your money was concentrated in the same part of the market, well, don't triple down on that, right? Like, put some money somewhere else. And that, I think it's one of the points too, is like when you go through these volatile times, it's so much more helpful if you have money in lots of different investments, right? Like to your point, Chris, if you're in international right now, commodities have gone up, real estate went up. Your portfolio really didn't go down that much if you had your money spread out. You don't want to live by the sword, die by the sword. When the market's down and it's volatile and all your money's concentrated, it's so much harder to stay invested.
Dad, I think Ryan's still trying to double down on Russia. I'm not sure.
Well, you take a look at international, right? You're getting a 3% dividend. And as you said, Chris, it's up 14% this year. But, when you run to cash, I mean, look, there's nothing wrong with having a little bit of cash, but you're getting, a little better than 3%, and there's no upside, and you're paying tax, and you're getting, you're losing money to inflation. So, you look at the equity market, and you're able to get an invest with a dividend with a chance of making an additional 5 to 10% every year. So, it's kind of a no-brainer if you think about it long term. But I'll tell you the one thing. And this is what, when I go back to Philly next week, they'll have these crash-proof retirement commercials on every minute. And whenever there's volatility, these guys crank up their advertisements so that people can put their money into an annuity, which is the worst thing you could ever possibly do.
Tell us how you really feel, Bob. But no, this is where Wall Street starts to prey on your fears, right? These insurance products that offer you a quote-unquote guarantee. And we know that that's fraught with lots of issues. They have these quote unquote private investments on Wall Street that are supposed to be less volatile, give you more yield. But what we find is the fees are higher and they're just hiding the volatility because they don't price a lot of these investments on a daily basis. But this is where you have to be really careful because when you're at your most vulnerable, that's when Wall Street really starts to pitch a lot of these more exotic investments that we've learned over time. You don't want to run away. You don't want to walk away from. You want to run away from.
Whenever you have this neat package of you can get all the upside, well, at least a modest return with no downside risk, and there's no cost that I can see except for you end up with an investment that has tremendous high fees. You have tremendous surrender charges, which is what your commission was, and they're complex. I mean, we have someone that works for us full time analyzing these annuities because they're so complex. I don't want to make fun of the insurance industry, but there's not a huge moat, protecting people to get in. It's not a hard industry to get in. It's not a hard industry to hang a shingle. And I doubt very seriously any of these annuity salesmen understand even an eighth of the complexity of what they're selling.
And I'll give you a great example. I just helped a client of mine unwind one of her annuities. She was getting a 0.01% return on her money.
Wow.
Guaranteed.
Over what period of time, Chris?
Over 20 years.
Over 20 years. Now there's a deal.
Well, here's the irony of it, right? A lot of times what you get pitched is, well, you want to have some hedges against the stock market. So you want to have some of these quote unquote alternative investments that cost an arm and a leg. They're more complex. They're usually less tax efficient. In fact, one of our clients used to build a lot of these products for some of these high-end firms, and he wouldn't put his money there. This just goes to show you how some of these exotic products, how bad some of these exotic products are. But meanwhile, just owning, like you just mentioned, Chris, having a low-cost international index in your portfolio, having a low-cost commodity index in your portfolio, these cheap hedges work better, and they're 100% liquid, meaning you have access to your money, where a lot of these products you don't. That's the worst thing, especially as you're planning for retirement, is not having access to your capital.
So what I'm hearing you saying, Ryan, don't panic because of your fear of the stock market right now, the economy, and take advantage of these wonderful offerings from Wall Street, these special investments in private credit and private equity, right? One of the things that I learned early on working for a big institution is my clients weren't the firm's clients. Their clients were big institutional investors who were trying to sell things they couldn't sell to other institutions to my small retail clients. And whenever Wall Street comes out with a special opportunity, you don't want to walk away. You want to run away, especially this private credit and private equity deals that are being offered today.
Well, I think what you're saying, Dad, is special means low return, high fees. That's what I hear.
But they get pitched on high return, right? Because they give you these yields that are really juicy. And, Bob, I think you've said this before, more money's been lost chasing yield at the point of a gun. And the point is, when they're offering 12% or 13%, do you think there's some risk with this investment? Yes, there is.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So, there's no free lunch. And we're seeing more and more of this type of investment pitched. And more you have to be more vigilant to stay away from a lot of these exotic investments, because at the end of the day, usually the firm wins and the broker who sold you this investment wins. That's 2/3, but you end up being the loser. And you have to be more careful than ever, because we're seeing more of these charlatans selling more of this BS than we've ever seen before. If you saved over $1 million for your retirement, myself and Bob and our team at Payne Capital will run for you our total financial master plan, and we'll do that with no obligation or cost. It's a full holistic review. We literally look at everything. There's not a firm out there that will do this work up front. We go as far as building you your own personalized financial portal. We give you a bird's eye view of your entire financial life, and we'll hone in on every financial issue you need to address today, whether it's that income plan for retirement. How do you take Social Security? There's a lot of ways to take it, but one right way for you. How do you draw from your portfolio the most tax efficient way? We'll give you a full income plan, factor in inflation so you don't run out of money. We're going to look at diversification. Markets have been all over the place, up and down. Has your portfolio been extremely volatile? Or have you been sitting in cash? Paralysis by analysis, can't figure out what to do. We'll put together a full diversified investment game plan, show you how to grow your wealth, tie it to your goals, but most importantly, protect it over the rest of your life. And we're going to look at fees and taxes. Wall Street loves to sell you high cost, tax inefficient products, whether it's an annuity, mutual fund, insurance product, brokerage product. We're going to go through every investment you have, deep dive. We're going to show you how to reduce all the internal cost and optimize your portfolio for taxes. It's not what you make, it's what you take. You'll get our full tax playbook. We literally have 4 slots left. If you saved over $1 million for your retirement, all you need to do is call or text at 844-752-6692. That's 844-752-6692. If you call or text us right now at 844-752-6692, that's 844-PLAN-NYC, 844-PLAN-NYC.
Thanks for listening to More Money with Steve Moore. You can hear More Money with Steve Moore Saturday afternoons at 1. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?
77 WABC invites you to a family fun day and softball showdown on July 20th with net proceeds benefiting Shriners Children's. John Sterling will call the game as the FDNY takes on the NYPD with special guests Dwight Gooden, Art Shamsky, 77 WABC hosts including Sid Rosenberg, Anthony Cumia, Lionel, Dominic Carter, and many more. For more info and to buy tickets, go to ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org. That's ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org.